She cheated, tried to blame me, and lost everything, my ultimate revenge. I never thought a simple toast at a bar would be the beginning of the end. Friday night was supposed to be routine. My wife and I were out with friends, the same group we always met up with. Laughter, drinks, casual conversation. It should have been just another night. But something was off. She had been distant for weeks, brushing off my attempts to connect. That night, though, it became impossible to ignore. She stood up suddenly, clinking her glass with a spoon, silencing the chatter. I expected some light-hearted joke or a funny story at my expense. Instead, she smirked, raised her glass and said, "To my husband, the most patient man I know. He really puts up with more than anyone should." Laughter rippled through the group, but it was forced, uncertain. I felt my face heat up as I glanced around. Some looked amused. Others avoided eye contact. I forced a smile, lifted my glass, and swallowed the lump forming in my throat. Something was wrong. The moment she sat down, I leaned in. "What was that about?" I asked, my voice low enough so only she could hear. She just rolled her eyes. "Relax, it was a joke." But it wasn't. The entire night, she was glued to her phone. It would buzz, and she'd glance at it with a smirk, but she never responded in front of me. When I finally asked, she didn't even hesitate. "Work stuff," she said, barely looking up. I let it go for the moment. But when we got home, I couldn't shake the feeling. She was in the shower when I saw her tablet on the couch, unlocked. Normally, I wouldn't have even thought about going through her stuff. But something in me told me that if I didn't check now, I'd regret it. I tapped the messaging app. The first message I saw sent a cold rush through me. "Last night was amazing. Same time next week." The response was hers. "Me too. Can't wait." My hands clenched around the tablet as I scrolled up, scanning the messages. There was no denying what I was looking at. Flirty texts, plans for secret meetups, inside jokes that I wasn't a part of. And then I heard the bathroom door unlock. She walked out, toweling off her hair, and froze the second she saw me holding her tablet. Her eyes flicked to the screen, then back to me. For the first time in years, I saw something real in her expression. Fear. "What the hell are you doing?" she snapped, trying to keep her voice steady. I stood up slowly, holding up the tablet. "You tell me." Her face shifted in an instant. The fear vanished, replaced by something colder, indifference. She crossed her arms, tilting her head. "Are you seriously going through my stuff? That's pathetic." I felt my jaw tighten. "Don't you dare try to turn this around on me." She sighed dramatically, like I was just some inconvenience. "Fine. You want the truth?" "Yes. I've been seeing someone. And honestly, I don't even know why you're so shocked." The room felt smaller, like the walls were closing in. "How long?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She shrugged, completely unfazed. "Does it matter?" Something inside me snapped. "It matters to me." She met my eyes, smirking. "Months." My hands curled into fists. I had expected denial. I had expected excuses. What I hadn't expected was for her to look me in the eye and act like none of this even mattered. "You could have just left," I said, my voice eerily calm. "Instead, you lied. You humiliated me. You made me look like a fool." She actually laughed. "Oh, don't be so dramatic. It's not like I planned to fall for someone else. It just happened." "You don't just happen to cheat for months." She rolled her eyes. "Well, maybe if you weren't so boring, I wouldn't have needed to look elsewhere." I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay in control. "Get out." She raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me?" "Get out." For the first time, she looked uncertain. "You can't be serious." I stepped forward, my voice steady. "Go stay with him. Go be with your amazing new guy. But you're not sleeping in this house tonight." Her lips pressed into a thin line, and for the first time, she actually hesitated. But then, just as quickly, the coldness returned. "Fine." She grabbed her bag and her keys. No apology. No hesitation. Not even a glance back. The door slammed shut behind her. And just like that, she was gone. I stood in the silence, the weight of everything crashing down on me at once. She didn't even fight for me. She had already decided I wasn't worth it. But what she didn't realize was that this wasn't the end of my story. This was just the beginning. I stood there, staring at the door she had just walked out of, the echo of it slamming shut still ringing in my ears. The silence that followed was deafening. This house, our house, felt different now, like it wasn't mine anymore. Like I was standing in the ruins of something that had already been collapsing for months without me realizing it. I sank onto the couch, the tablet still in my hands, the incriminating messages still glaring back at me from the screen. I didn't even need to scroll anymore. The words had already burned themselves into my mind. Last night was amazing. Same time next week. Me too. Can't wait. I had spent years believing we were building a life together, that we had something real. But to her, it was disposable, replaceable. I had no idea how long she had been planning her escape, how long she had been making a fool of me, but I wasn't about to sit here and let her walk away like none of it mattered. I closed the tablet and set it on the coffee table, my mind racing. I wanted to scream, to break something, to do anything to release the anger bubbling inside me, but I wouldn't give her that satisfaction. She thought she had control, that she could walk out and leave me drowning in the wreckage she created. But she was wrong. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through my contacts, my fingers hovering over one name before I pressed call. The line rang twice before a familiar voice answered. "Dude, you okay?" It was Luke, my oldest friend. He had been at the bar earlier that night, had probably seen the tension, but he had no idea how deep it really went. "She's cheating," I said, my voice flat. I didn't even have to say her name. He knew. There was silence on the other end before he let out a low breath. "Are you sure?" I glanced at the tablet again, at the words that had shattered everything. I saw the messages, Luke. I confronted her. She didn't even deny it. Jesus. Another pause. Where is she now? Gone. Packed a bag and left like it was nothing. "Man, I'm so sorry," he said, his voice filled with something close to anger. "You need me to come over?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to say yes, to have someone here, but another part of me knew I needed to sit in this moment to process it. "No, not yet." "All right, but if you need anything, I'm here." I hung up and tossed my phone onto the couch. I should have felt relief that she was gone. But I didn't. All I felt was raw, seething anger. Not just at her, but at myself. How had I not seen the signs? Had she been laughing at me this whole time? Whispering about me with him while I sat across from her at dinner? Oblivious? I stood and started pacing. I couldn't stay in this house. Not tonight. I grabbed my keys and walked out the door, locking it behind me before driving aimlessly through the streets. The city was alive. Bars full of people laughing, couples walking hand in hand, restaurants still buzzing with late-night diners. I felt like I was watching it all from behind glass, separate from the world I used to be a part of. I didn't even realize where I was going until I pulled into the parking lot of a small dive bar on the other side of town. It was the kind of place I used to go to before I met her, back when my life was simpler. I walked inside, ordered a whiskey, and found a seat in the corner, away from everyone. I took a slow sip, the burn doing nothing to numb the ache in my chest. I pulled out my phone again, not even sure why, and opened her social media. Nothing. No cryptic posts, no hints that her world had just imploded the way mine had. But I knew better. She wasn't the type to sit in regret. No, she was probably with him right now, laughing at how dramatic I had been, making plans for their next little rendezvous. The thought made my grip tighten around my glass. Then, on impulse, I searched for his profile. I didn't know what I was expecting, but when his page popped up, it was right there. A post from a few nights ago, a picture of a fancy dinner, captioned "Great night with even better company," and in the comments, her name, alongside a stupid little heart emoji. I stared at it, my blood boiling. They weren't even hiding it. They thought I was too stupid, too blind to ever notice. I put my phone down and exhaled slowly, forcing myself to stay in control. I wasn't going to lose my mind over this. I needed to think. I needed a plan. She had already made her choices, and now it was my turn to make mine. The next morning, I woke up in my own bed, though I barely remembered the drive home. I hadn't even turned the lights on when I got back, just collapsed onto the mattress, fully clothed. But now, in the daylight, reality came crashing back. I sat up slowly, rubbing my face before glancing at the nightstand. My phone was there, the screen lit up with unread messages. One from Luke, a few from mutual friends, and then one from her. I hesitated before opening it. "I'll come by later to get the rest of my stuff. Let me know when you won't be home." No apology, no regret, just cold, detached efficiency. I typed back, "Come whenever. Just be quick." I tossed my phone back onto the nightstand and stood up. I wasn't going to sit around waiting for her to waltz in and pack up the rest of her things like this was just another day. No, I had work to do. I grabbed my laptop and started pulling up bank statements, joint accounts, anything that tied us together. I wasn't going to let her walk away without consequences. As I scrolled through the records, something caught my eye. Charges that didn't make sense. Hotels, restaurants I had never been to, expensive gifts that certainly weren't for me. She had been using our money to fund her affair. My hands clenched into fists. She thought she had won. She thought she had all the power. She had no idea what was coming. I didn't waste any time. The moment I realized she had been using our joint finances to fund her affair, something inside me hardened. This wasn't just betrayal, it was theft. She had spent months lying to my face, humiliating me, making me think I was the problem while she wined and dined with him, using my money like it was hers to burn. That wasn't going to slide. I took screenshots of every transaction, every suspicious charge that lined up with nights she claimed she was working late or out with friends. A 5-star hotel stay 2 months ago. A high-end restaurant reservation I knew I hadn't been at. Jewelry that had never made it into our house. Flights. All of it right there, buried in the bank statements she thought I wouldn't bother looking at. She had been so sure I would never question her. But she had underestimated me. I knew exactly what I needed to do next. I picked up my phone and made another call, this time to a lawyer. I had no idea what I was walking into, but I wasn't about to let her get away with everything. The receptionist put me on hold for a few minutes before connecting me to a woman whose voice was sharp, direct, and all business. "This is Lila. How can I help?" I exhaled, steadying my voice. "I need to start the divorce process." There was a pause. "I see. Have you and your spouse discussed this yet?" "She left last night," I said. "I caught her cheating. She admitted it. And I just found out she's been spending our money on her affair." Lila didn't sound surprised. "Do you have proof?" "I do." "Good," she said without hesitation. "Then we have leverage. Do you share any major assets? Property, vehicles, joint accounts?" "Yes. A house, a shared account, and a few investments." "We need to act fast," she said, "before she realizes you're moving forward. Gather every document, bank statements, credit card bills, anything that shows financial mismanagement. If she's been using shared funds for personal affairs, that could work in your favor." "Already on it," I said. "Smart," she said, and I could tell she meant it. "This won't be easy, but the sooner we start, the better." By the time I hung up, my mind was clear. This wasn't just about getting a divorce, it was about making sure she didn't walk away unscathed. An hour later, I had every document printed and stored in a folder. I took one last look through our account and froze when I saw a pending charge. A new hotel booking. It had been made just this morning. She was still doing it. Even now. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. She had no idea I was already working to cut her off. Let her think she was still in control. Let her think she was getting away with it. I would make sure that by the time she realized what was happening, it would already be too late. That afternoon, I got another text from her. "I'll be by around 6 to grab my things." I stared at it for a long time before responding. Fine. I wasn't going to be here when she arrived. I didn't want to see her, didn't want to hear her fake justifications. But I wasn't about to make this easy for her either. Before I left, I gathered every single thing she had left behind. Clothes, shoes, bags, everything that belonged to her. I stuffed it all into garbage bags and left them by the door. She didn't deserve the courtesy of neatly packed suitcases. Then I went into the bedroom and stripped the bed. The sheets she had slept in, the pillows she had rested her head on, the blanket that still faintly smelled like her perfume. I threw them all into a trash bag and dumped it in the garage. She had tainted this house. I wasn't going to let her linger any longer than necessary. At 5:45, I grabbed my keys and left. I drove a few blocks away, parked, and waited. At exactly 6:02, I saw her car pull into the driveway. She stepped out, her sunglasses perched on top of her head. Her posture relaxed like this was just another errand to check off her list. She walked up to the front door and hesitated when she saw the garbage bags. I watched from a distance as she frowned, pulled out her phone, and sent a message. My phone buzzed. "Are you serious? Trash bags?" I didn't reply. A minute later, she unlocked the door and stepped inside. She was probably expecting to see everything the way she had left it, like she still had a place here. But that wasn't the case. I had erased her. Another message. "You really emptied the bedroom? You're acting like a child." I smirked, shaking my head. She still thought she had the upper hand. I waited until I saw her leave, dragging the garbage bags behind her with an annoyed look on her face. When she finally drove off, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. She was gone. For now. But this wasn't over. The next morning, I met with Lila in person. She was exactly what I needed: cold, efficient, and ruthless. She didn't offer sympathy, just solutions. "You're in a good position," she told me as she flipped through the documents I had brought. "Your evidence is solid. If she's been spending marital assets on an affair, we can argue for financial compensation. Depending on the state laws, we can even use her infidelity as grounds to protect your assets." I nodded. "I don't want her taking a dime more than she already has." Lila smirked. "Then we'll make sure she doesn't." By the time I left her office, I had a strategy. Step 1. Lock down our finances. I transferred my direct deposits into a new account under my name and notified the bank to flag any suspicious withdrawals. Step 2. Change the locks. She had already moved out, but I wasn't taking any chances. Step 3. Wait. I wasn't going to tell her about the divorce filing right away. I wanted her to think she had more time, that she could keep playing her game, that she had won. Because when the papers finally hit her hands, it would be the first time she realized she hadn't won anything. The first sign that she realized she wasn't in control anymore came 2 days later. My phone buzzed while I was at work. I glanced down at the screen, expecting another text from Luke or maybe a follow-up from Lila. Instead, it was her. "We need to talk." I stared at the message for a long moment. It wasn't a demand. It wasn't one of her smug, dismissive texts. It was different, short, uncertain. She was feeling the shift. I didn't reply. A few hours later, another message. "I don't want things to get ugly." I nearly laughed. That was rich coming from her. She had no problem lying, sneaking around, using my money to fund her affair. But now that the consequences were closing in, now that she could feel the walls tightening around her, suddenly she wanted to play nice? I left her on read. That evening, Lila called with an update. "She got the initial notice," she said, her tone as crisp as ever. "From what I can tell, she hasn't responded yet, but she's probably weighing her options. Expect her to try reaching out." "She already has," I said. "She wants to talk." Lila made a sound that was almost a laugh. "Of course she does." She's starting to realize how badly she played this. She thought she could do whatever she wanted and still have the upper hand. But now she's scrambling. Good. I wanted her to feel it. The next morning, I was pouring myself a coffee when my phone rang again. I didn't even have to look to know it was her. I let it ring out. A minute later, a voicemail notification popped up. I hesitated, then pressed play. Her voice was softer than I'd heard in weeks, maybe months. "Look, I know you're mad, but can we just talk? This doesn't have to be a disaster, okay? We can figure something out." I don't want things to be hostile. She still didn't get it. I wasn't mad. I was done. And as much as she wanted to make this sound like a simple breakup, like two people just growing apart, I wasn't going to let her rewrite the narrative. She didn't get to cheat, lie, humiliate me, and then act like we were just two reasonable adults parting ways. She made her choices. Now she would live with them. 2 days later, I got a text from Luke. Dude, you're not going to believe this. She's already telling people you're trying to ruin her life. I shook my head, not even surprised. I had been waiting for this. What exactly is she saying? I typed back. That you're dragging things out to punish her. That you're being petty. That you're obsessed with getting even. She's playing the victim hard. Classic. She was trying to control the story before it controlled her. She must have realized by now that she wasn't going to walk away from this as easily as she thought. So she was doing what people like her always did. Twisting the truth. Playing the poor, misunderstood woman who just happened to fall out of love and now had to deal with her bitter, vengeful ex-husband. It was predictable and pathetic. I wasn't going to play into it. Instead, I waited. And sure enough, the next escalation came later that night. A knock on my door. I didn't even have to check the peephole to know it was her. For a moment, I considered ignoring it. Letting her stand there. Letting her realize she didn't have access to me anymore. But a small part of me was curious. I wanted to see what she looked like now that her plan was crumbling. I opened the door. She was standing there in jeans and a sweater, her usual effortless look. But for the first time in a long time, she didn't look confident. She looked uneasy. She glanced past me, like she was expecting to be invited in. When I didn't move, her lips pressed together, and she exhaled. Ryan, can we talk? I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. About what? She blinked, like she hadn't expected me to be so direct. About this. About us. About how we can move forward without all this hostility. I almost laughed in her face. Hostility? She thought this was hostility? No, hostility would have been me exposing her affair to everyone she knew. Making sure her new lover's name was dragged through the mud. Making her life as miserable as she made mine. But I wasn't doing that. I was doing something much worse. I was cutting her out completely. And that was driving her insane. There is no us, I said finally. There hasn't been for a long time. She frowned, shifting her weight. You don't have to be cruel. That did make me laugh. Cruel, I repeated. Cruel is lying to someone for months. Cruel is cheating and using our money to do it. Cruel is humiliating your husband in front of his friends. But now that I'm not playing along, now that you don't have control, suddenly I'm the cruel one. She didn't answer. I shook my head. You don't get to manipulate me anymore. She swallowed, her expression shifting. I saw it then, the realization creeping in. She wasn't getting anywhere with me. You know, she said, voice quieter. For a long time, I thought you were the one who didn't care. I thought you had already checked out, that I was just waiting for you to admit it. I stared at her. So that's the excuse now? She looked away. I'm just saying, maybe we both made mistakes. I let out a slow breath, steadying myself. No, I said simply. You made mistakes. I trusted you. I was loyal to you. I gave you everything. And you threw it away for someone who doesn't even respect you. Her eyes flashed, like she wanted to argue. But she didn't, because she knew I was right. She looked past me again, then sighed. So, that's it. I nodded. That's it. She hesitated for half a second longer. Then finally, she stepped back. I hope you don't do anything you'll regret. I met her eyes, and this time I smiled. A real, genuine smile. That's the difference between us, I said. I don't regret anything. And then, without another word, I shut the door in her face. I didn't check to see if she lingered. I didn't watch her walk away. I didn't care anymore. Because for the first time in months, maybe even years, I was free. The moment I closed that door, I felt something shift. It wasn't just the satisfaction of shutting her out. It was the realization that I didn't feel the anger the same way anymore. I had spent weeks drowning in it, letting it fuel me, letting it keep me awake at night. But now, Now all I felt was clarity. She had tried one last time to manipulate me, to spin the story in her favor, and I had shut her down completely. She wasn't used to that. She wasn't used to being the one without control. I locked the door, exhaled, and walked away without a second glance. That night, I slept better than I had in months. The next morning, I checked my phone and found a string of missed calls from Luke. I frowned and called him back. He picked up on the first ring. "Dude, you need to get online. Right now." I sat up, my heart already starting to race. "Why?" "She's trying to flip the script." I grabbed my laptop, opened it, and within seconds, I saw exactly what he meant. She had gone public. A long, carefully crafted post on her social media, complete with just the right balance of self-pity and vague accusations. I never thought things would end this way. It's been so hard dealing with the fallout, but I refuse to let bitterness control me. At the end of the day, I know I tried my best, and that's all anyone can do. Some people just don't want to move forward. The comments were already rolling in. "Stay strong, girl. You deserve happiness. Wow, I didn't know it was that bad. You're better off without that kind of negativity. Some people just can't handle seeing their ex happy. Keep your head up." I almost laughed. It was exactly what I expected. She wasn't outright calling me the villain, but she didn't have to. She was setting the stage, letting people fill in the blanks, feeding them just enough to make it seem like she was the one who had been wronged. And the best part? She thought I wouldn't do anything about it. She still thought I was playing by the old rules. Luke called again before I could even process my next move. "Dude, you seeing this?" "Oh, I'm seeing it," I said. "She's baiting you, man." "I know." He hesitated. "So, what are you gonna do?" I let out a slow breath, feeling the familiar burn of anger creeping in. But instead of letting it take over, I channeled it, focused it. "She wants to play this game? Fine," I said. "Let's see how she likes it when she loses." I spent the next few hours doing exactly what I should have done weeks ago, taking full control of the narrative. I started with a message to Lila. "She's trying to spin this publicly. How much can I legally share?" Her response was immediate. "As long as you don't fabricate anything, you're within your rights to defend yourself. Keep it factual, keep it sharp." That was all I needed. I pulled up everything. The screenshots of her messages with him. The bank statements showing how she had been funneling money from our joint account to pay for their little getaways. The timestamps proving she had been lying to my face for months. And then, I did what she never expected. I posted my own message. It was simple, direct, and it didn't leave any room for doubt. It's funny how people who spend months lying, cheating, and using joint finances to fund their affair suddenly play the victim when consequences catch up to them. I don't owe anyone an explanation, but I'll say this: I have receipts. And I won't let my name be dragged through the mud just because someone can't handle the fallout of their own actions. I attached a few carefully chosen screenshots, just enough to prove the point. Just enough to show the truth without even needing to say her name. And then I logged off. By the time I checked back later that night, the damage was already done. Her post? Completely backfired. The comments that had been blindly supporting her were now mixed with people asking questions, people pointing out the inconsistencies, people who had seen my post and realized there was a whole other side to the story. And then came the real kicker. I got a message. Not from her. From him. The guy she threw everything away for. I stared at my screen for a long time before finally opening it. "Look, man. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but can we talk?" I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I took a deep breath, let the anger settle, and then typed back. "What could you possibly have to say to me?" His response was almost immediate. "She lied to me too." I narrowed my eyes, rereading the words. He continued, "I didn't know she was married at first. And when I did find out, she made it seem like you were the problem, like you didn't care about her, like she was trapped in this miserable marriage. I believed her. But now, I see who she really is." I stared at the message, feeling something strange creeping in. It wasn't sympathy. It wasn't even relief. It was just confirmation. He had fallen for the same act I had. The difference was I had spent years in it. I debated ignoring him, but curiosity won out. And now, I typed. His reply came seconds later. Now she's doing the same thing to me. Couldn't help it. I laughed. A sharp, bitter laugh that felt like the final piece of the puzzle clicking into place. She hadn't just cheated on me. She had moved on from me. And now, just like clockwork, she was already setting the stage for her next escape plan. It was almost poetic. I didn't feel bad for him. He had been a willing participant in wrecking my marriage. But I did feel something close to amusement at how quickly the fantasy had fallen apart for him too. He sent one more message. I just thought you should know. I get it now. I stared at the screen for a long time before finally responding. Good. Maybe next time, you'll think twice before screwing over someone who trusted you. I didn't wait for a response. I logged out, set my phone down, and exhaled. She had spent so long thinking she could manipulate everyone, thinking she could control every outcome. But she had lost. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. The final nail in her coffin came faster than I expected. After my post exposing the truth, after her new lover reached out to me realizing he'd been played just like I had, everything started to unravel for her. The perfect image she had so carefully curated was crumbling. And the best part? I didn't even have to lift another finger. She was the one who had built her life on lies. I had simply shined a light on it. I wasn't naive enough to think she would go down quietly, though. She had spent too much time trying to control the narrative, twisting reality to suit her needs. When I woke up the next morning, I saw it. Another social media post from her. A weak, half-hearted attempt at damage control. I never wanted to air personal matters online, but it's heartbreaking when someone you trusted tries to ruin your reputation just because things didn't work out. I know my truth, and the people who truly know me do too. I won't engage in negativity. I actually laughed out loud when I read it. The people who truly knew her? That was funny. Because as far as I could tell, the number of people who still believed in her truth was shrinking by the minute. The comments told me everything I needed to know. Wait, didn't he post proof that you cheated? Kinda weird how you won't address the receipts, though. If you know your truth, why do the bank statements say otherwise? She wasn't fooling anyone anymore. And for the first time, it wasn't me drowning in humiliation. It was her. I went about my day, feeling lighter than I had in months. Work felt easier. The house, my house, felt bigger, less suffocating. I had even started going to the gym again, rediscovering the person I had been before she drained the life out of me. Then, just when I thought I had seen it all, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to pick up. Ryan? A deep voice asked. Who's this? There was a short pause before the last person I expected spoke. Her father. I sat up straighter, gripping the phone tighter. Her father? The man who had never fully warmed up to me but had always been polite enough when we saw each other. The man who, as far as I knew, had no idea about any of this mess. What do you want? I asked. He sighed. I heard what happened. I didn't say anything. I wasn't about to explain myself to him, wasn't about to defend myself like I had done something wrong. If he was calling to tell me to keep things quiet, he was wasting his breath. But then he surprised me. You were always good to her, he said. I may not have shown it much, but I saw that. And now I see who she really is. I frowned. She's been trying to spin the story, hasn't she? A humorless chuckle came through the line. Oh, she tried. But she's never been a very good liar when it comes to family. I leaned back, processing this. So why are you calling me? Because I wanted you to hear it from me. I don't condone what she did. I don't respect it. And I sure as hell don't support her trying to drag your name through the mud just to save face. I wasn't sure what to say. Of all the things I had expected in the fallout of this disaster, her own father turning on her wasn't one of them. So, he continued, if you're worried about her trying to come after you for anything, don't be. She's on her own. I exhaled slowly. Good to know. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, he added after a moment. I don't expect you to care, but I figured you deserved to hear it. It wasn't much. It didn't erase everything. but it was something. Thanks, I said simply before ending the call. I sat there for a long time, letting it sink in. She had burned every bridge, even with her own blood. That's when I knew. She had truly lost. 2 weeks later, the divorce was finalized. No drawn-out court battle. No unnecessary drama. The evidence Lila had gathered made sure of that. She had no leverage, no way to fight for anything. She had cheated. She had wasted our money. She had tried to humiliate me. And in the end, she walked away with nothing. The day I got the final confirmation, I cracked open a beer, sat on my porch, and just breathed. It was over. There was no sadness, no nostalgia, just relief. That night, I got one final message from her. I hope one day you can move past this bitterness and find happiness. I never wanted things to end this way. I stared at it for a moment before deleting it without responding. She still didn't get it. I was happy, happier than I had been in years. She was the one who had to live with the choices she made. And me? I was finally free. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new upload.